Millionaire finds poor girl crying over lost necklace. He froze. It was the same as his late wife's and could not hold back the tears in his eyes. Before we dive into the story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. The autumn rain drummed against the windshield of Michael Harrison's black Mercedes as he sat in the parking lot of Roosevelt Elementary School. At 36, he was worth more money than most people could dream of, but today he felt as empty as the passenger seat beside him. 3 years. 3 years since Sarah had been gone, and still every Tuesday at 3:15 he found himself here. He wasn't picking up a child. God knows they'd never had that chance. He was here because Dr. Patterson insisted that routine helps with grief, and this had become his routine. Watching other people's children run to waiting arms, reminding himself of everything he'd lost. Michael was about to drive away when he heard it, a sound that cut through the rain like a knife through his chest. Sobbing, deep, heart-wrenching sobs that only a child could make when their world was falling apart. A little girl, maybe 7 years old, sat alone on the school steps. Her clothes were worn but clean, her dark hair plastered to her face by the rain. She was clutching something in her small hands, examining it desperately, then crying harder. Every instinct told Michael to drive away. He didn't do well with children, too many reminders of what could have been, but something about her desperation made him turn off the engine. Before he knew it, he was walking through the rain toward her. "Hey there," he said gently, crouching down to her level. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" The little girl looked up with eyes so dark and sad they seemed ancient. "My necklace," she whispered. "It's broken. The man said it can't be fixed." She opened her trembling hands, and Michael's world stopped. There, lying in the small palms of this stranger's child, was a delicate silver necklace with a tiny heart pendant. But not just any necklace. Michael would recognize that intricate Celtic knot pattern anywhere, the small chip on the left side of the heart, the way the silver had worn smooth in exactly the right places. It was Sarah's necklace, the one he'd given her on their first anniversary, the one she'd worn every single day until... Where? Michael's voice cracked. He cleared his throat and tried again. "Where did you get this?" "It was my mama's," the girl said, fresh tears streaming down her cheeks. "She gave it to me before she went to heaven. I never take it off, never. But today the chain broke and the man at the jewelry store said it's too old and delicate. He said it's worthless." Michael felt like he was drowning. His hands were shaking as he reached out to touch the necklace, and when his fingers made contact with the familiar metal, a sob escaped his throat before he could stop it. "Sir, are you okay?" the little girl asked, her own tears pausing as she saw this grown man crying. How was this possible? Sarah's necklace had been buried with her. He'd made sure of it. He'd kissed her forehead one last time in that hospital bed, fastened the necklace around her neck himself, and watched them close the casket. So how was it here, in the hands of a child who claimed it belonged to her mother? "What's your name, sweetheart?" Michael managed to ask. "Emma Rodriguez," she said. "What's yours?" "Michael," he whispered, staring at the necklace as raindrops mixed with his tears. "Emma, I think we need to talk to your mama about this necklace." "I can't," Emma said, her voice breaking again. "She's at work. She's always at work. And she'll be so sad if she knows it's broken. This is all I have left of her sister." "Sister?" Michael's head was spinning. "Emma, what happened to your mama's sister?" "She died in the hospital 3 years ago. Mama said she was very sick. That's why Mama gave me the necklace. So I'd always remember Aunt Sarah loved me." The world tilted on its axis. Sarah. This child's aunt was named Sarah, and 3 years ago was exactly when. Michael's vision blurred as the impossible pieces started forming a picture he wasn't ready to see. Standing in the rain with this crying child, holding his dead wife's necklace, he realized that everything he thought he knew about Sarah's final days was about to change. "Emma," he said, his voice barely audible above the rain, "I think I can fix your necklace, but first, you and I and your mama need to have a very important conversation." The drive to Emma's apartment building took them through the oldest part of Portland, where paint peeled from weathered buildings and hope seemed as scarce as parking spaces. Michael's Mercedes looked wildly out of place as Emma directed him to a narrow street lined with identical brown brick structures. "This is it," Emma said quietly, pointing to Building 47. "Mama's probably making dinner." As they climbed the creaking stairs to the third floor, Michael's heart hammered against his ribs. How do you tell a woman that the stranger carrying her daughter claims to have been married to her dead sister? How do you explain that you're holding a necklace that should be 6 feet underground? Emma pushed open apartment 3B without knocking. "Mama, I'm home! And I brought someone." The woman who emerged from the tiny kitchen made Michael's breath catch. She was older than Sarah had been, maybe 40, with the same dark eyes and delicate bone structure. But where Sarah had carried herself with quiet confidence, this woman moved with the exhausted grace of someone carrying the world on her shoulders. "Emma, Mija, you're soaked. Who is this man?" Rosa Rodriguez wiped her hands on a dish towel, her protective instincts immediately alert. "This is Michael, Mama. He's going to fix Aunt Sarah's necklace." Emma held up the broken jewelry, and Rosa's face went pale. "The necklace broke." Rosa knelt down, examining the delicate chain with shaking fingers. "Oh, baby, I'm so sorry. We'll find another—" "Mrs. Rodriguez," Michael interrupted gently, "I need to talk to you about this necklace, about Sarah." Rosa's head snapped up, her eyes narrowing with suspicion. "What about my sister?" Michael pulled out his phone, scrolling to a photo he'd never been able to delete. Sarah laughing on their honeymoon in Ireland, wearing the exact same necklace. He turned the screen toward Rosa, the color drained from Rosa's face completely. "Where did you get this picture?" "I took it," Michael said simply. "Sarah was my wife." The dish towel fell from Rosa's hands. She stood slowly, studying Michael's face as if seeing a ghost. "That's impossible. Sarah never. She never mentioned being married. Never mentioned anyone named Michael." "Mama!" Emma looked between the adults, sensing the tension, but not understanding it. "Emma, go wash up for dinner," Rosa said, her voice hollow. After Emma reluctantly disappeared down the hall, Rosa turned back to Michael. "If you were really married to Sarah, where were you when she died? Where were you during her final months when she was sick and alone?" Alone? Michael felt like he'd been punched. She wasn't alone. "I was with her every day. I held her hand through every chemo session, every doctor's appointment. I was there when she took her last breath." Rosa stared at him for a long moment, then slowly shook her head. "No. You weren't, because I was. Sarah died at Portland General Hospital on October 15th, 3 years ago. I was the only family member listed on her chart. I made all the decisions about her care because she had no one else." Michael felt the room spinning. "That's impossible. Sarah died at Seattle Presbyterian on October 15th. I have the death certificate." Both of them stood in stunned silence as the terrible truth began to dawn. Somehow, impossibly, they had both been with Sarah when she died. On the same day, in different cities, but that was impossible. Unless... "What was your wife's full name?" Rosa whispered. "Sarah Elizabeth Harrison, maiden name Chen." Rosa's knees buckled. She gripped the back of a chair for support. "My sister's name was Sarah Elena Rodriguez. She never changed it because she never got married." They stared at each other across the tiny living room, two people whose worlds had just shattered in completely different ways. Michael looked down at the necklace still clutched in his palm, the same necklace that had somehow belonged to two different women named Sarah, who had died on the same day, who had owned the same one-of-a-kind necklace. "This isn't possible," Michael whispered. Rosa's voice was barely audible. Unless they weren't different women at all. Rosa's hands trembled as she poured coffee into chipped mugs, the silence in the apartment thick enough to cut. Emma's voice drifted from her bedroom, where she was playing with her dolls, oblivious to the earth-shattering conversation happening in the kitchen. "Tell me about your Sarah," Rosa said finally, setting a mug in front of Michael. "Everything." Michael wrapped his hands around the warm ceramic, using the heat to ground himself. "We met at a medical conference in Chicago 5 years ago. She was a pediatric nurse. I was there for a charity donation to the children's wing. She was radiant. She had this way of making everyone around her feel like they mattered." Rosa's eyes filled with tears. "That sounds like my Sarah. She was always taking care of everyone else. We got married after 8 months. Small ceremony, just a few friends. She said she didn't have family." Michael's voice broke. "She said her parents died when she was young and she was alone in the world. I believed her because why would anyone lie about that?" "Because she was protecting you," Rosa said quietly, "and protecting us." "From what?" Rosa stood up abruptly, pacing to the small window that overlooked the street. "Michael, what I'm about to tell you, it's going to change everything you thought you knew about your wife." Michael braced himself, but nothing could have prepared him for Rosa's next words. "Sarah wasn't just my sister. She was my twin sister, identical. And 3 years ago, she wasn't just running from her illness. She was running from her past." The mug slipped from Michael's hands, coffee spreading across the worn linoleum. "Twins. We were separated when we were 16. There was an incident. Our father, he was not a good man. Sarah testified against him in court, and afterward she said she could never feel safe as long as she looked exactly like me. She changed her name, moved away, built a new life. But the necklace was mine first," Rosa said, touching her throat where an identical chain should have been. "I gave it to her the day she left. It was our grandmother's. I told her to wear it so she'd never forget where she came from, no matter how far she ran." Michael felt sick. "So when she was dying, she came back. 3 months before she died, she showed up at my door sick and scared. She said she'd made mistakes, that she'd hurt people she loved by lying to them. She wouldn't tell me details, just kept saying she had to make things right before it was too late. She never told me she was sick until it was stage 4, Michael whispered. She said she'd been hiding it because she didn't want me to worry. I thought that was the only secret." Rosa turned from the window, her face streaked with tears. "Michael, there's something else, something that's going to be even harder to hear." "What?" "The reason Sarah came back to Portland, the reason she was so desperate to reconnect with family in her final months." Rosa took a shaky breath. "She was pregnant." The words hit Michael like a physical blow. He doubled over, gasping, "That's impossible! The doctors said the cancer made pregnancy impossible. They said the treatments." "Not treatments, Michael. Sarah refused treatment for 3 months because she was pregnant. She chose the baby over fighting the cancer. She came to me because she knew she was going to die, and she wanted her child to know its family." Michael looked up at Rosa through his tears, the terrible truth dawning on him. "Emma." Rosa nodded slowly. "Emma isn't just my daughter, Michael. She's yours too." Michael stared at Rosa as if she'd spoken in a foreign language. His mind refused to process the words, rejected them like a body rejecting a transplanted organ. That's impossible," he stammered. "Emma is 7 years old. Sarah died 3 years ago. The math doesn't it?" Rosa interrupted gently. "Think, Michael. When did you last see Sarah before she died?" Michael's head was spinning. He forced himself to remember those final, awful months. She said she needed space to process the diagnosis. She moved out temporarily, said she was staying with a friend while she figured out treatment options. That was about 4 months before she died. 4 months. Rosa repeated. And during that time, how often did you see her? Weekly visits, sometimes less. She said the treatments made her tired, that she needed to rest. Michael's voice was barely a whisper. I thought I was being supportive by giving her space. Rosa sat down across from him, her eyes filled with compassion. Michael, Sarah was here. She spent those 4 months in this apartment, growing bigger every day, terrified to tell you the truth. But why? Why would she hide a pregnancy from me? We'd been trying for years. We'd gone through fertility treatments, miscarriages. The words came out choked. A baby was all we ever wanted. Because she knew what the pregnancy meant, Rosa said. The doctors told her that refusing cancer treatment to carry the baby to term was essentially a death sentence. She could either fight the cancer or save the baby, but she couldn't do both. Michael stood up so abruptly his chair toppled backward. She chose to die. She chose to leave me without even telling me I was going to be a father. She chose to give you a child, Rosa corrected firmly, even if it meant she couldn't be there to help you raise her. No. Michael shook his head violently. No, that wasn't her choice to make alone. We could have. Could have what? Convinced her to terminate the pregnancy, because that's what she was afraid of. She knew you'd beg her to choose treatment over the baby, and she couldn't bear to put you in that position. Michael slumped against the wall, the weight of 3 years of grief and guilt crushing down on him. So she let me think she was fighting, let me believe she was trying to get better when really she was sacrificing herself to give you the greatest gift she could. The sound of small footsteps in the hallway made them both freeze. Emma appeared in the doorway, her hair still damp from washing up, her dark eyes moving between the two adults with concern. Mama, why is everyone crying? Did I do something wrong? Rosa quickly wiped her cheeks and forced a smile. No, mija. Michael and I were just talking about some sad things. Adult things. Emma walked over to Michael, who was still leaning against the wall, looking shattered. She reached out and touched his hand with her small fingers. Are you sad about Aunt Sarah too? She asked innocently. Mama always cries when she talks about her. Michael looked down at this little girl, his daughter, seeing Sarah's eyes staring back at him, the same eyes that had looked at him with love, the same eyes that had held secrets he was only now beginning to understand. Yes, he managed to say. I'm very sad about Aunt Sarah. Emma nodded solemnly. Mama says she watches over us from heaven. Maybe she watches over you too. As Emma skipped back to her room, Michael turned to Rosa with tears streaming down his face. She doesn't know. I couldn't tell her. Sarah made me promise. She said if anything happened to me, Emma should go to foster care rather than disrupt your life. She thought you'd moved on, found peace. She didn't want her death to destroy you a second time. Michael looked toward Emma's room, where his daughter was humming quietly to herself, and felt his heart break all over again. Not just for Sarah, not just for the lies and the lost time, but for this innocent child who had no idea that the stranger in her living room was the father who'd been grieving a wife and child he never knew he'd lost. Rosa, he said quietly, what do we do now? Before Rosa could answer, Emma's voice called out from her bedroom. Mama, someone's knocking at the door really loud. The pounding that followed wasn't the polite knock of a neighbor. It was urgent, demanding, and it made Rosa's face go white with fear. Mrs. Rodriguez, Child Protective Services. We need to speak with you immediately. Rosa froze at the sound of the official voices in the hallway. Michael watched her face cycle through fear, confusion, and something that looked almost like recognition. CPS, Michael whispered. Why would they? I don't know, Rosa said, but her voice carried a tremor that suggested otherwise. Emma, stay in your room, okay? The knocking came again, more insistent. Mrs. Rodriguez, we have reports of an unauthorized male in the residence. Please open the door. Michael's blood ran cold. Reports from who? Rosa's hands shook as she approached the door. Through the peephole, she could see 2 uniformed officers and a woman in a business suit holding a clipboard. I have to let them in. Mrs. Rodriguez, the social worker said the moment the door opened. I'm Janet Morrison with Child Protective Services. We received an anonymous tip that you've been allowing strange men around your daughter. We need to conduct a welfare check. Anonymous tip? Rosa's voice cracked. There must be some mistake. This is Emma's. She looked at Michael desperately, not knowing how to explain his presence. I'm a family friend, Michael said quickly, stepping forward. Michael Harrison. I was helping with a broken necklace. The social worker's eyes narrowed as she took in Michael's expensive clothes and the obvious disparity between his appearance and the modest apartment. Sir, are you related to the child? The question hung in the air like a loaded weapon. Michael opened his mouth, then closed it, realizing that the truth was too complicated and the lie might make things worse. He's... Rosa started, then stopped. He knew Emma's aunt. I see. Mr. Harrison, we'll need to see some identification and ask you to wait outside while we speak with Mrs. Rodriguez and the child. Susty. As Michael reluctantly left the apartment, he heard Emma's confused voice asking why there were strangers in their home. His heart broke thinking about his daughter being questioned by officials, scared and not understanding why. He waited in the hallway for what felt like hours, but was probably only 30 minutes. When the CPS team finally emerged, the social worker handed Rosa a business card. We'll be scheduling a follow-up visit within the week, she said curtly. And Mrs. Rodriguez, I'd be very careful about who you allow around your daughter. The state takes child welfare very seriously. A day after they left, Rosa collapsed onto her couch, her head in her hands. This is a nightmare. Emma was terrified. They asked her if anyone had ever touched her inappropriately, if she felt safe, if strange men came to the apartment often. Rosa, who would call CPS? Who even knows I was here? Rosa looked up with tears in her eyes. I think I know, but first there's something I need to show you, something Sarah left for you. She disappeared into her bedroom and returned with a shoebox that had seen better days. Inside were dozens of letters, all addressed to Michael Harrison, in Sarah's familiar handwriting. None of them had been mailed. She wrote to you almost every day during those final months, Rosa said quietly, but she could never bring herself to send them. Michael's hands trembled as he picked up the first letter. It was dated 4 months before Sarah's death. My dearest Michael, I know you must hate me for leaving without explanation. I know you must think I don't love you anymore, but I love you more than life itself, which is why I have to do this alone. He picked up another, dated 2 months later. The baby kicked today, strong kicks, just like her daddy. I've decided it's a girl. I don't know why, just a feeling. I want to name her Emma after your grandmother. You told me once that she was the strongest woman you ever knew. Our daughter is going to need that strength. And another, dated just weeks before Emma was born. I'm scared, Michael, not of dying. I made peace with that months ago. I'm scared that Emma will grow up thinking her father didn't want her. I'm scared that you'll hate me for choosing her over staying with you, but I couldn't let our baby die just to buy myself a few more months. You understand that, don't you? You have to understand. Michael was sobbing openly now, clutching the letters to his chest. She was protecting me from having to make the choice. She was protecting everyone, Rosa said. But Michael, there's something else, something that explains the CPS visit. She pulled out the last letter in the box, dated just days before Emma's birth. My love, if you're reading this, it means Rosa kept her promise to give you these letters if something happened to me. But there's one more thing you need to know. The reason I had to disappear so completely, the reason I could never risk you finding me during the pregnancy. Michael looked up at Rosa. What did she mean? Rosa's face was grim. Michael, your wife didn't just hide her pregnancy from you, she hid it from someone else. Someone who's been watching, waiting, and who just found out you exist. Who? Rosa met his eyes with a look of fear he'd never seen before. Emma's biological father. The words hit Michael like a physical blow. What? But you said Emma was mine. Emma is yours in every way that matters. You're the man Sarah chose to be her father. But Michael, Rosa's voice dropped to a whisper. Sarah was raped 6 months before she met you. She never told you because the trauma was too much, and when she got pregnant, she wasn't entirely sure. Michael felt the world tilt again. A rape? Someone forced. Someone who never stopped looking for her. Someone who just figured out that Sarah had a child, and now he knows about you too. As if summoned by their conversation, Rosa's phone buzzed with a text message. Her face went white as she read it. What is it? Michael demanded. Rosa turned the phone toward him with shaking hands. The message was from an unknown number. Tell your boyfriend I know about my daughter. If he wants to keep playing daddy, he's going to have to pay $50,000 or everyone finds out the truth about Sarah. You have 48 hours. The text message sat between them like a bomb waiting to explode. Michael read it 3 times before the words fully sank in. Someone was watching them. Someone who claimed Emma was his daughter. Rosa, who is this person? What's his name? Rosa wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly looking much older than her 40 years. David Carlisle. Sarah never told me much about what happened, just that he was someone she'd trusted, someone she worked with. When she pressed charges, he made her life hell. Threatened her, followed her, made her believe she'd never be safe. Is that why she changed her identity? Partly. But it got worse after the trial. David was acquitted. Not enough evidence, they said. Sarah's word against his. He told everyone who would listen that she was lying, that she'd been trying to seduce him, and got angry when he rejected her. Michael felt rage building in his chest. And this is the man claiming to be Emma's father? Michael, you have to understand. Sarah never knew for certain. The timing was unclear. She was so traumatized that she blocked out a lot of details about when exactly the assault happened. When she found out she was pregnant, she was already with you, and she chose to believe Emma was yours because she couldn't bear the alternative. But now he knows about Emma. How? Rosa pulled out her laptop and showed Michael a Facebook page. David Carlisle, a man in his 40s with cold eyes and a practiced smile. According to his profile, he worked in medical administration at Portland General Hospital. The same hospital where Sarah died. Michael breathed. He must have seen her records. Or maybe he's been monitoring my social media. I posted a picture of Emma last month for her birthday, and she looks so much like Sarah. Rosa's voice broke. If he's been watching, he would have connected the dots. Michael studied the photo Rosa had posted. Emma grinning in their tiny living room, wearing a party hat, her dark eyes sparkling with joy. In the background, barely visible, was a framed photo of Sarah. The CPS call, Michael realized. He reported you to try to remove Emma from your custody, or to scare us into paying him. David always was calculating. He knows I'm a single mother working 2 jobs. He knows $50,000 might as well be $1 million to me. Michael stood up, pacing the small living room. But I have that money. I could pay him. No! Rosa's voice was sharp. Michael, you can't. People like David, they never stop. You pay him once, he'll be back for more. He'll hold this over us forever. Then what do we do? Let him take Emma. Let him destroy her life the way he destroyed Sarah's. Before Rosa could answer, Emma's bedroom door opened. Their daughter appeared in the hallway, clutching a stuffed rabbit and looking smaller than her 7 years. Mama, I heard you crying again. Are the scary people coming back? Rosa quickly wiped her eyes and forced a smile. No, baby. Everything's okay. But Emma's perceptive gaze moved between the adults, landing on the letters scattered across the coffee table. "Are those from Aunt Sarah?" Michael's heart stopped. "What makes you say that?" "The writing looks like hers. She used to write me notes and hide them in my lunchbox when she was sick." Rosa kept them in that same box. Emma walked over and picked up one of the letters. "This one has your name on it, Michael." The innocence in her voice was devastating. Here was a child who had no idea that the letters were from her birth mother to her biological father, no idea that her entire world was about to be turned upside down by a man who saw her as nothing more than leverage. "Emma," Michael said gently, "can you come sit with me for a minute?" She climbed onto the couch beside him, still clutching her stuffed rabbit. Up close, he could see so much of Sarah in her face, but also features he didn't recognize, a stubborn chin that might have been his or might have belonged to someone else entirely. "Do you remember much about your Aunt Sarah?" he asked. Emma nodded solemnly. "She was sad a lot when she lived with us, but she would sing to me at night when I couldn't sleep. She said she was teaching me songs so I'd never forget her voice." "What did she tell you about your daddy?" Emma's face scrunched up in thought. "She said he was a good man who lived far away. She said someday I might meet him, but only when I was old enough to understand about grown-up problems." Rosa's phone buzzed again. Another message from the unknown number. "Time's ticking, and just so we're clear, I have proof Emma is mine. DNA doesn't lie. 47 hours left." This time, there was an attachment. A medical document that made Rosa's face go white. "What is it?" Michael demanded. Rosa showed him the screen. It was a lab report dated 3 months after Emma's birth, showing David Carlisle had somehow obtained a DNA sample, probably from a discarded cup or utensil, and had it tested against a sample he claimed was Emma's. The results showed a 99.7% probability of paternity. "How did he get Emma's DNA?" Michael asked, but even as he said it, he knew. David worked at a hospital. He had access to labs, to equipment, to ways of making things happen quietly. Emma looked up at both adults, her 7-year-old intuition picking up on the tension. "Is someone trying to take me away from Mama?" The question hung in the air like a sword above their heads. Michael looked at this little girl, his daughter in every way that mattered, regardless of DNA, and felt something crystallize inside him. "Emma," he said firmly, "I want you to know something very important. No matter what happens, no matter what anyone says, you are loved, you are wanted, and there are people who will fight to keep you safe." "People like you?" she asked innocently. Michael met Rosa's eyes over Emma's head. In that moment, a decision was made without words. "Yes," he said quietly. "People exactly like me." As if David Carlisle had been listening, Rosa's phone rang. The caller ID showed the same unknown number that had been sending the texts. "Don't answer it," Michael said quickly, but it was too late. Rosa had already picked up. "Hello, Rosa," came a smooth voice through the speaker. "I think it's time we all had a conversation." David Carlisle's voice through the phone speaker was like ice water in Michael's veins, smooth, confident, predatory. Emma instinctively moved closer to Michael, her child's intuition recognizing danger, even if she couldn't understand it. "Rosa, you're looking well. Motherhood suits you, though I imagine it's expensive on a waitress's salary." "Ah, what do you want, David?" Rosa's voice was steady, but her hands shook. "I think you know exactly what I want. My daughter has been kept from me for 7 years. That's 7 years of birthdays, first steps, bedtime stories. Do you know what that's worth?" Michael grabbed the phone. "This is Michael Harrison." "If you have something to say, say it to me." A pause, then low laughter. "Ah, the wealthy widower. Sarah certainly had a type, didn't she? Rich, naive, easily manipulated." "Sarah wasn't a manipulator, wasn't she? She told you she was an orphan, didn't she?" Let you believe you were her whole world while she was carrying another man's child. Face it, Michael, you never really knew your wife at all. Michael's free hand clenched into a fist. What do you want? Simple. Legal custody of Emma and $100,000 for my pain and suffering. Consider it back child support. The hell? Or, David continued smoothly, I go to the media with a very interesting story. Rich CEO unknowingly raising the child of his wife's rapist. Oh, and did I mention I have photographs? Sarah visited me several times during her pregnancy, willingly. Apparently, she wasn't as traumatized as she claimed. Rosa made a strangled sound. That's impossible. Sarah would never. Security cameras don't lie, Rosa. Neither does DNA. I have everything I need to prove Emma is mine, and that your precious Sarah was nothing but a lying whore who trapped a rich man with another man's baby. Mama! Emma's small voice cut through the venom. Who is that man? Why is he saying mean things about Aunt Sarah? The adult conversation stopped abruptly. All three adults realized simultaneously that Emma had heard everything. Emma, go to your room, Rosa said gently. But now, please. After Emma reluctantly left, David's voice returned, syrupy with false concern. How unfortunate. Children shouldn't have to hear such adult conversations. Of course, they also shouldn't have to grow up not knowing their real father. You're not her father, Michael said fiercely. DNA doesn't make you a parent. Being there does. Loving her does. Tell that to a judge. I have rights, Michael, and I have evidence that will destroy any chance of you keeping her. Meet me tomorrow at noon, Riverside Park by the playground. Bring a cashier's check and we'll discuss terms. And if we don't, then I'll see you in court and in the newspapers and on every social media platform I can find. By the time I'm done, Emma will know exactly what kind of woman her mother really was. The line went dead. Michael stared at the phone in his hand, feeling like he was drowning. In the span of 6 hours, he'd discovered he had a daughter, learned his wife had kept devastating secrets, and now faced losing everything to a monster who saw a child as nothing more than a payday. Rosa, he said quietly, we're not giving him anything. Michael, you don't understand. David Carlyle destroys people for sport. If he has photographs, if he has evidence that Sarah visited him willingly. Then we find out why. Sarah wasn't stupid, and she wasn't weak. If she went to see him during her pregnancy, she had a reason. Rosa looked toward Emma's room, where their daughter was probably listening through the thin walls. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we fight back. Michael didn't sleep that night. He spent the dark hours in his downtown penthouse, staring at Sarah's letters and trying to piece together a puzzle with too many missing pieces. At 6 a.m. he called his lawyer. James, I need you to research someone. David Carlyle works at Portland General Hospital. I need to know everything. Criminal history, civil suits, employment record, parking tickets, everything. Michael, what's this about? It's about my daughter. There was a pause. I thought you and Sarah never had children. It's complicated. How quickly can you get me that information? Give me 4 hours. Michael's next call was to Rosa, who sounded like she hadn't slept either. I'm hiring a private investigator, he told her, and a family lawyer. If David wants a fight, he's going to get one. Michael, I can't afford. You're not paying for anything. Emma is my daughter, and I protect what's mine. When Michael arrived at Rosa's apartment that morning, he found Emma sitting at the kitchen table, listlessly pushing cereal around in her bowl. She looked up when he entered, her dark eyes solemn. Are you really my daddy? She asked without preamble. Rosa nearly dropped her coffee mug. Emma, what makes you ask that? I heard you and that mean man talking. He said something about my real father. And Mama, you always get sad when people ask about my daddy. But when Michael is here, you smile different. Michael knelt down beside Emma's chair. Would it be okay with you if I was? Emma studied his face with the serious consideration only children could manage. Aunt Sarah said my daddy was a good man. Are you a good man? I try to be. Do you like princess movies? I've never watched one, but I'd like to learn. Emma nodded gravely. Okay, you can be my daddy. But you have to learn about princesses. It's important. Despite everything, Michael smiled. Deal. His phone rang, James calling back early. Michael, you need to hear this. David Carlyle has quite a history. 3 sexual assault allegations in the past 10 years, all dismissed due to lack of evidence. 2 harassment charges, one involving a former co-worker who claimed he stalked her for months. Any convictions? That's where it gets interesting. No convictions, but a pattern of settlements. Large cash payments to make problems go away. And Michael, the hospital has been investigating him for improper access to patient records. Someone's been accessing files without authorization. Sarah's file, among others. The investigation started 6 months ago, but it's been stalled due to Carlyle's connections on the hospital board. Michael felt a spark of hope. James, I need you to contact the hospital administration. If they're already investigating him for accessing patient records illegally, they might be very interested to know he's been using that information to blackmail families. I'm on it. An hour later, Michael's private investigator called. Mr. Harrison, I think you need to see something. David Carlyle's been busy. I found records of him visiting a storage facility in southeast Portland. Paid cash for a unit 3 years ago, right around the time your wife died. What's in the storage unit? That's what we need to find out. But Mr. Harrison, there's something else. I tracked down Sarah's former co-worker, a nurse named Jennifer Walsh. She wants to talk to you. Says she has information about why Sarah might have visited Carlyle during her pregnancy. They met Jennifer at a coffee shop near the hospital. She was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and the no-nonsense demeanor of someone who'd seen too much. Sarah was my friend, she said without preamble. And David Carlyle is a predator. When Sarah came back to Portland, sick and pregnant, she was terrified. Not just of dying, but of him finding out about the baby. But she visited him, Rosa said. David has proof. Jennifer nodded grimly. She did visit him 3 times, but not for the reasons he's claiming. She pulled out her phone and showed them a photo. Sarah asked me to take this picture the day of her last visit to his office. She said if anything happened to her, someone needed to know the truth. The photo showed Sarah sitting across from David in what looked like a medical office. But Sarah wasn't there as a victim. She was wearing a wire. The small recording device was barely visible under her shirt. Sarah was gathering evidence, Jennifer continued. She knew David had been accessing patient files, using information to manipulate vulnerable women. She recorded their conversations, documented his threats. She was building a case to finally stop him. Michael's heart was pounding. Where are the recordings? That's the problem. Sarah hid them somewhere before she died. She told me they were in a safe place, but she never told me where. I assumed Rosa would know. Rosa shook her head. She never mentioned recordings to me. Jennifer looked around nervously, then leaned closer. There's something else. David doesn't know I took that photo, but he knows Sarah was recording him. That's why he's so desperate to get custody of Emma. It's not about the money, or even about control. If those recordings surface, they'll destroy him. He thinks if he has Emma, he can leverage Rosa into telling him where Sarah hid the evidence. But Rosa doesn't know where. That doesn't matter to David. He'll tear that family apart looking for those recordings. And if he can't find them, Jennifer's voice dropped to a whisper, he's capable of anything. Sarah knew that. It's why she was so afraid. Michael stood up abruptly. We need to find those recordings before he does. Michael, Rosa said, Sarah never told me about any recordings. I don't know where to start looking. But Emma, who had been quietly coloring in the corner of the coffee shop, looked up with sudden interest. Are you talking about Aunt Sarah's treasure box? All three adults turned to stare at her. What treasure box, Mika? The one she buried in the park. She said it was full of important things that would keep bad people away. She made me promise never to tell anyone unless the bad people came looking. Michael's blood ran cold. Emma, what park? The one with the big playground, where you used to go feed the ducks, Mama. Aunt Sarah said she buried it under the angel statue so the angels would keep it safe. Riverside Park, the same park where David had demanded they meet him. Emma, Michael said carefully, when did Aunt Sarah bury this treasure box? The day before she went to the hospital and didn't come back. She was very sick, but she said it was the most important thing she had to do. Michael looked at his watch. They had less than 3 hours before David expected them at the park. 3 hours to find evidence that could save Emma and destroy the man who'd been terrorizing their family for years. But first, they had to get to that angel statue before David realized what Emma knew. The drive to Riverside Park felt like the longest 20 minutes of Michael's life. Emma sat in the back seat, clutching her stuffed rabbit and giving directions in her matter-of-fact 7-year-old way. Turn left at the big tree, Michael. The angel statue is behind the pond, past where all the ducks live. Rosa sat in the passenger seat, nervously checking her phone. What if David's already there? What if he's been watching the park? Then we deal with it, Michael said grimly. He'd called James and asked him to contact the FBI about David's illegal access to patient records. If they could prove he'd been blackmailing families, Emma wouldn't be the only victim he'd targeted. The park was mostly empty on a Tuesday morning. A few joggers on the paths, an elderly man feeding ducks at the pond. Michael parked near the playground and scanned the area for any sign of David. There! Emma pointed excitedly. There's the angel! The statue stood about 50 yards from the parking lot, a weathered marble angel with outstretched wings overlooking the pond. The ground around its base was soft earth and fallen leaves, perfect for a desperate woman to hide something precious. Emma, I need you to stay with Rosa while I look, okay? But I know exactly where it is. Aunt Sarah showed me. Michael looked at Rosa, who nodded reluctantly. She's right. If Sarah wanted Emma to remember the location, she would have been specific. They approached the angel statue together, Emma leading the way with the confidence of a child who'd been entrusted with an important secret. Right here, she said, pointing to a spot at the base of the statue where the ground looked slightly disturbed. She said 3 steps from the angel's feet toward the biggest duck. Michael knelt and began digging with his hands, pushing aside dirt and leaves. After a few inches, his fingers hit something hard, a metal box about the size of a jewelry case. That's it! Emma clapped her hands. That's Aunt Sarah's treasure box. Michael pulled the box from the ground, his heart pounding. It was an old tin cash box, locked but not secured with anything more sophisticated than a simple combination lock. Emma, do you know the combination? She nodded solemnly. My birthday, 0703. The lock clicked open, and Michael held his breath as he lifted the lid. Inside were a small digital recorder, several USB drives, and a stack of photographs. On top was a note in Sarah's handwriting. For Emma's protection. The truth about David Carlyle. Michael picked up the recorder and pressed play. Sarah's voice, weak but determined, filled the air. This is Sarah Rodriguez, recording my conversation with David Carlyle on September 15th. David, you asked me to come here today. Can you tell me why? David's voice followed, and the malice in it made Michael's skin crawl. Because you owe me, Sarah. You ruined my life with your lies, and now you're going to make it right. I know you're pregnant, and I know you're hiding from your husband. Poor Michael thinks you're getting treatment when really you're carrying my child. Sarah's voice remained steady. David, you and I both know Emma isn't your biological daughter. You raped me, yes, but I was already pregnant when that happened. You've been living with a delusion for 7 years. That's impossible. The DNA test. The DNA test you ran on hair you stole from my apartment when you broke in? The hair that belonged to Rosa, not Emma? We're identical twins, David. You tested my sister's DNA against your own and assumed it was my daughter's. A long silence on the recording, then David's voice, filled with rage. You lying bitch! You've been playing games with me for years. I've been protecting my family from a monster, and now I'm going to end this. You've been accessing patient files illegally, using personal information to stalk and blackmail vulnerable women. I have proof of everything. Michael stopped the recording, his hands shaking. She was protecting Emma all along. She knew David wasn't the father, but she let him believe it to keep him focused on her instead of Rosa and Emma. Rosa was crying openly. She died protecting us, even when she was sick, even when she was scared. She was still fighting for Emma. Mama, Emma tugged on Rosa's sleeve. Is that why Aunt Sarah was so sad? Because she was fighting the bad man? Yes, baby. She was making sure you'd be safe. Michael's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Running late? Don't worry, I can wait. Especially since I just saw you digging around my old hiding spot. Did you really think Sarah was the only one who knew about that statue? Michael spun around, scanning the park. There by the parking lot stood David Carlyle. He was smiling and talking on his phone, but his eyes were fixed on their little group. Rosa, take Emma and go to the car. Now. Michael. Now! He stood up, slipping the recorder into his jacket pocket. Drive straight to the police station. Don't stop for anything. But as Rosa started toward the parking lot with Emma, 3 men emerged from behind the restroom building, blocking their path. David's backup plan. Michael realized with growing horror that they were trapped. David had been watching, waiting, and now he had them exactly where he wanted them. David approached slowly, his smile never wavering. Hello, Michael. I hope you brought my money, because the price just went up. Seems like Sarah left me a little going-away present after all. David Carlyle walked toward them with the casual confidence of a predator who knew his prey had nowhere to run. His 3 associates spread out, cutting off any escape routes to the parking lot. You know, David said conversationally, I have to admire Sarah's ingenuity, hiding evidence right under my nose all these years, but she made one critical mistake. What's that? Michael asked, subtly positioning himself between David and Emma. She assumed I didn't know about Rosa. David's smile turned predatory. Identical twins. How romantic. Did you know I met Rosa first, Michael? 3 years ago, right after Sarah died. She was so grief-stricken, so vulnerable. I almost felt bad about what I was going to do. Rosa's face went white. You were the one who applied for the apartment below mine. The helpful neighbor who offered to babysit Emma when I had to work late shifts. Guilty, David said with mock shame. Amazing how easy it is to gain a single mother's trust when you present yourself as a concerned citizen. I've been watching Emma grow up, Michael, taking pictures at school events, documenting her development, building my case for when I decided to claim what's mine. Michael felt sick. You've been stalking a child for 3 years. I've been getting to know my daughter and learning about her family. Did you know Rosa keeps a spare key under the flower pot by her door? Very trusting. I've been in your apartment dozens of times, Rosa. Going through Emma's things, learning her routines, taking samples for DNA testing. You're insane, Rosa whispered. I'm thorough and patient, but Sarah's little treasure hunt ends today. David held out his hand. Give me the recorder, Michael, and the USB drives, everything in that box. So you can destroy the evidence of your crimes? So I can protect myself from a dead woman's lies. David's facade of civility finally cracked. Do you have any idea what Sarah cost me? my career, my reputation, my peace of mind. For 7 years I've lived with the belief that I had a daughter out there, a piece of myself that I'd been denied. And now I find out it was all an elaborate game to protect her real family. Emma isn't your daughter, Michael said firmly. The DNA proved that. Did it? Because I had Emma's DNA tested against mine 6 months ago. Real DNA this time, from a cup she drank from at a school event. Would you like to know the results? Michael's blood turned to ice. What results? David pulled out his phone and showed them a lab report. 97. 3% probability of paternity. Seems Sarah wasn't as clever as she thought. The world tilted around Michael. It was impossible. Sarah had said on the recording that Emma wasn't David's. She'd said the timing was wrong, that she was already pregnant when the assault happened, but DNA didn't lie. You're looking a little pale, Michael, realizing your wife played you for a fool? That you've been raising the child of the man who raped her? Stop it, Emma said suddenly. Her small voice cut through the adult conversation like a knife. Stop saying mean things about my mama and Aunt Sarah. David knelt down to Emma's eye level, his voice taking on a sickeningly sweet tone. Hello, sweetheart. Do you know who I am? Emma looked at him with the clear-eyed assessment of a child who'd learned to recognize danger. You're the bad man who makes Mama cry. I'm your daddy, Emma, your real daddy, and I've come to take you home. No, Emma said firmly. Michael is my daddy. He fixes things and he's learning about princesses. David's mask slipped entirely. You don't understand. You little... Don't you dare speak to her that way, Michael snarled, stepping forward. But David was ready for him. One of his associates moved quickly, grabbing Michael's arm and twisting it behind his back. Another man seized Rosa. Here's what's going to happen, David said calmly. You're going to give me that recording, sign custody papers I've already prepared, and walk away. Emma comes with me, and you never see her again. The hell... Or I release everything to the media, photos of Emma, details about Sarah's lies, speculation about what kind of man unknowingly raises his wife's rapist's child. How do you think that will affect your business, Michael? Your reputation? Michael struggled against the man holding him, but the grip was too strong. You can't just take her. This isn't legal. With DNA evidence and proof that Rosa has been keeping my daughter from me, a judge will see this as parental kidnapping. Rosa will go to prison, you'll be humiliated, and Emma will learn the truth about her precious Aunt Sarah in the most painful way possible. Emma, who had been listening to this exchange with growing fear, suddenly did something unexpected. She pulled out her phone, a basic model Rosa had given her for emergencies, and held it up. "What are you doing, sweetheart?" David asked, his voice still saccharine. "I'm recording you," Emma said matter-of-factly. "Aunt Sarah taught me how. She said if bad people ever tried to hurt our family, I should make a recording so the police would know what really happened." David's face went purple with rage. "Give me that phone." "No," Emma said, backing away. "You said mean things about Aunt Sarah, and you're trying to take me away from my family. The police need to know." David lunged for Emma, but she was small and quick. She darted behind the angel statue, still holding her phone. "Emma, run!" Rosa screamed, but Emma didn't run. Instead, she looked directly at David with an expression far too mature for her 7 years. "You want to know the truth about my DNA?" she said clearly. "Aunt Sarah told me before she died. She said if the bad man ever came back, I should tell him about the blood transfusion." David froze. "What blood transfusion?" "When I was little, I was very sick. I needed special blood, and Aunt Sarah gave me hers. She said it changed my DNA markers, made them mixed up. She said if anyone ever tested my blood, it would show both of our DNA together." Michael's mind raced. A bone marrow transplant. It was possible in rare cases for a transplant to alter DNA test results, if Sarah had been a donor for Emma during a childhood illness. David's face was a mask of fury and confusion. "That's impossible. Children don't get bone marrow transplants from relatives unless—" He stopped mid-sentence, the implication hitting him like a freight train. "Unless they're biological relatives," Michael finished quietly. "Sarah wasn't Emma's aunt, was she?" Emma shook her head solemnly. "Aunt Sarah was my real mama. She told me the truth before she died. Rosa is my aunt, who became my mama when my real mama got too sick to take care of me." The revelation hit everyone like a bomb. Rosa's tears, the identical necklace, the way Emma looked so much like Sarah, it all made sense now. "Sarah was your biological mother," Michael whispered, staring at Emma. Which means I'm your biological father," Michael said, his voice filled with wonder. "Emma, you're really my daughter." David's carefully constructed web of lies and manipulation was unraveling before his eyes. But cornered animals were the most dangerous, and Michael could see the desperation building in David's face. "This changes nothing," David snarled. "I still have the recordings. I still have evidence of Sarah's lies. I'll destroy all of you." "No," said a voice from behind them. "You won't." They turned to see FBI agent Patricia Collins approaching with 4 federal agents, weapons drawn. Jennifer Walsh was with them, along with James and a man Michael didn't recognize. "David Carlisle, you're under arrest for wire fraud, computer crimes, stalking, and violation of HIPAA regulations. You have the right to remain silent." As the agents handcuffed David and his associates, Emma ran to Michael, who swept her up in his arms. For the first time in 7 years, he held his daughter, his real daughter, and felt the missing piece of his heart finally click into place. 3 weeks later, Michael sat in the same coffee shop where they'd first met Jennifer Walsh. But this time, the atmosphere was entirely different. Emma was at the counter, seriously debating between chocolate chip cookies and apple turnovers, while Rosa reviewed legal documents that would make Michael Emma's official guardian. "I still can't believe Sarah kept the truth from all of us," Rosa said, shaking her head. "Even from me. I thought Emma was my niece." "She was protecting everyone," Michael replied, watching Emma finally decide on both cookies. If David had known Emma was really her biological daughter, he would have come after her sooner. By making everyone believe Emma was your daughter, she kept her safe. The truth had come out in pieces over the past few weeks. Sarah had indeed been pregnant when she met Michael, but the pregnancy had ended in miscarriage at 4 months, something she'd hidden from him because she knew how desperately he wanted children. When Emma was conceived a year later, Sarah had been overjoyed, but the cancer diagnosis had changed everything. Sarah's decision to let Rosa raise Emma as her own daughter had been strategic. As an aunt, Rosa had legal standing to keep Emma if anything happened to Sarah. And if David ever came looking, he would see Rosa as Emma's mother, not a guardian protecting Sarah's biological child. "The bone marrow transplant story was brilliant," Jennifer said, joining them at the table. "Even I believed it for a minute. That girl is sharp." Emma had indeed been hospitalized as a toddler, but for pneumonia, not leukemia. Sarah had coached her to remember the story about blood transfusions and DNA changes, a safeguard in case David ever confronted her directly. "David's lawyer called this morning," James reported, sitting down with his own coffee. "He's pleading guilty to all charges in exchange for a reduced sentence, 30 years minimum. He won't be bothering anyone for a very long time." Michael felt a weight lift from his shoulders. "And the other families he blackmailed?" 7 women have come forward with similar stories. David used patient information to target vulnerable families for years. Your case broke it wide open." Emma bounced back to the table with her cookies, climbing onto Michael's lap with the easy familiarity of a child who'd found her place in the world. "Daddy, can we go see Mama Sarah's grave after lunch? I want to tell her that the bad man is gone and we're all safe now." Michael's throat tightened. In the past 3 weeks, Emma had seamlessly transitioned to calling him Daddy and Rosa Mama, understanding somehow that love made families, not just biology. "Of course, sweetheart. What do you want to tell her?" Emma considered this seriously, taking a bite of her chocolate chip cookie. "I want to tell her that you learned about princesses just like you promised, and that Rosa smiles all the time now instead of being sad, and that I remember all the songs she taught me." "That sounds perfect." Rosa reached across the table to squeeze Michael's hand. "Have you decided about the house?" Michael nodded. He'd been thinking about it for days. His downtown penthouse was no place for a child, and Rosa's tiny apartment was cramped for 3 people. "I think we should start fresh. All of us. Find a house with a yard for Emma, maybe close to her school." "All of us." Rosa's eyes filled with tears. "Emma needs her mama," Michael said simply. "And I need my family to be complete." They talked about it extensively. Rosa would continue working part-time at the diner because she loved it, but she wouldn't have to work double shifts anymore. Emma would have 2 parents who adored her, financial security, and most importantly, the truth about who she was and where she came from. "There's something else," Michael said, pulling an envelope from his jacket. "Jennifer found this in Sarah's things at the hospital. It's addressed to all 3 of us." With trembling fingers, Rosa opened the final letter from her sister. "My dearest family, if you're reading this together, it means my plan worked. Michael, you have found your daughter. Rosa, you have found help in raising her. And Emma, my precious girl, you have your daddy at last. I know the road to this moment has been painful. I know you must be angry with me for the lies, the secrets, the choices I made without consulting you. But I need you to understand, every decision I made was to protect the 3 people I loved most in the world. Michael, you would have tried to save me. You would have sacrificed everything to fight a battle we couldn't win. And Emma would have lost both her parents. Rosa, you would have tried to carry my burdens along with your own, and the weight would have broken you. Emma, my baby, you were too young to understand why Mama had to go away. So I chose for all of us. I chose to give you each other. Take care of one another. Build the family I dreamed of but couldn't stay to see. And remember that love, real love, isn't about blood or genetics or legal documents. It's about choosing each other every day, even when it's hard. Emma will ask questions as she gets older. Tell her the truth, that her mama loved her enough to die for her, and that her daddy loved her enough to fight for her, and that Rosa loved her enough to sacrifice her own happiness to keep her safe. You are a family because you choose to be. That makes you stronger than any family that exists simply by accident. All my love, always, Sarah. By the time Rosa finished reading, all 3 of them were crying. Emma looked up at Michael with her dark eyes, Sarah's eyes, and reached up to wipe a tear from his cheek. "Don't be sad, Daddy. Mama Sarah is happy now. She told me in a dream that she's not sick anymore, and she's watching over us from heaven." Michael hugged his daughter tighter, looking around the table at the family Sarah had given him, not the family he'd expected, not the family he'd planned for, but the family he was meant to have. "Come on," he said, standing up with Emma still in his arms. "Let's go tell Mama Sarah that her family is complete." As they walked toward the parking lot together, father, daughter, and the woman who'd sacrificed everything to keep them safe, Michael felt Sarah's presence like a warm breeze. She'd kept her promise. She'd given him the greatest gift she could. She'd given him a reason to believe in love again. 6 months later, Michael stood in the doorway of Emma's new bedroom, watching his daughter arrange her stuffed animals on shelves that he'd built himself. The house they'd chosen was a 2-story colonial in a quiet neighborhood, with a backyard big enough for a swing set and a garden that Rosa tended with the same loving care she gave everything in their lives. "Daddy, does Mr. Rabbit go next to the princess books or with the other animals?" Emma asked, holding up her worn stuffed rabbit. Where do you think Mr. Rabbit would be happiest? Emma considered this with the seriousness she brought to all important decisions. With the princess books. He likes stories. Michael smiled, thinking of how much Emma had taught him about what really mattered. His business was thriving. Turned out that fighting for his daughter had given him a clarity and purpose he'd never had before. But the real measure of his success wasn't in boardrooms anymore. It was in moments like this, in bedtime stories and scraped knees, and the way Emma's face lit up when he walked through the door. "Michael!" Rosa called from downstairs. "Emma's teacher is here." They'd been expecting Mrs. Patterson for Emma's home visit. The school had been incredibly supportive throughout the transition, helping Emma process the changes in her family structure with patience and understanding. Downstairs, Mrs. Patterson was sitting in the living room with Rosa, a cup of tea balanced on her knee. She looked up as Michael and Emma entered, her face breaking into a warm smile. "Emma's been telling me all about her family project," she said. "I understand she's chosen a very special topic." Emma nodded eagerly. "I'm doing my presentation about heroes. People who save other people even when it's scary." "And who are your heroes?" Mrs. Patterson asked. Emma looked up at Michael, then over at Rosa, then picked up a framed photo from the mantel, the last picture of Sarah, taken just weeks before she died. "My mama Sarah, who saved me by making sure I'd have a family who loves me. My mama Rosa, who took care of me even when she was sad and scared. And my daddy Michael, who fought the bad man to keep me safe." Mrs. Patterson's eyes glistened. "That sounds like a wonderful presentation." "I'm going to tell everyone that families aren't just about blood," Emma continued. "They're about people who choose to love each other no matter what. My teacher says that's the most important kind of family." After Mrs. Patterson left, the three of them settled into their evening routine. Rosa in the kitchen preparing dinner, Emma at the table doing homework, Michael helping where he could. It was beautifully ordinary, this life they'd built together. Later, after Emma was asleep, Michael and Rosa sat on the back porch, watching fireflies dance in the gathering dusk. "Do you ever wonder what Sarah would think of all this?" Rosa asked softly. Michael was quiet for a long moment. "I think she'd be proud. Not just of how Emma's doing, but of how we've become a family, real family." "I still miss her," Rosa admitted. "Every day." "So do I. But I'm grateful too, for the gift she gave us, for the courage she had to make impossible choices so we could be here together." Rosa nodded, wiping away a tear. "Emma asked me yesterday if I was her real mom or her aunt mom. I told her I was her heart mom, and that was the most real kind there is." "Heart mom," Michael repeated. "I like that." They sat in comfortable silence, two people who'd found their way to each other through loss and love and the fierce protection of a child who meant everything to both of them. The next morning, Michael woke to the sound of Emma singing in her room, one of the songs Sarah had taught her. He lay in bed, listening to his daughter's sweet voice, and felt a peace he'd never thought possible after Sarah's death. At breakfast, Emma made an announcement. "I want to get Mama Sarah a new flower for her grave. A special one." "What kind of flower, sweetheart?" "A sunflower. Because they're big and bright and they always face the sun, even when it's cloudy, just like Mama Sarah did." That afternoon, the three of them drove to the cemetery together. Emma carried a small sunflower in a pot, insisting she could manage it herself. At Sarah's grave, she knelt down and carefully placed the flower next to the headstone. "Hi, Mama Sarah," she said conversationally. "I brought you a flower that looks like how you made me feel inside. Daddy and Mama Rosa and I are a family now, just like you wanted. We love each other and take care of each other, and we tell everyone about how brave you were." Michael knelt beside his daughter, placing his hand on the headstone that read, "Sarah Elena Rodriguez, beloved sister, mother, and wife." "Thank you," he whispered. "For Emma." for showing me what real love looks like, for trusting me with the most precious thing in your world." As they walked back to the car, Emma slipped her small hand into Michael's larger one. "Daddy, do you think Mama Sarah knows we're happy?" Michael squeezed her hand gently, looking back at the sunflower that would catch the morning light and turn its bright face toward the sky. "I think she knows, sweetheart. I think she's been watching over us all along, making sure we found our way to each other." "Good," Emma said with satisfaction, "because we're the best family ever, and I want her to see how perfect everything turned out." As they drove home through the golden afternoon light, Michael realized Emma was right. They were perfect, not because they'd avoided pain or loss, but because they'd chosen love in spite of it. Sarah's greatest gift hadn't just been Emma. It had been showing them all that families are built not by blood or law, but by the daily choice to love, protect and cherish each other. And in that choice, they'd found their way home.